Today, on episode 7 of the Mean Grit podcast, we are going streaking. What? Oh, not that streaking?
You think you're funny, do you? Funny.
I am here today with Jeff and Jami Downs, the creators of streaking.
Yes.
But we're fully clothed.
Exactly.
Help clarify here. Why are we fully clothed and we're streaking?
It's not that kind of streaking.
Okay, not that kind of streaking.
No football field.
This is about consistency.
legal.
Yeah.
Okay, this is
Exactly.
about making something so simple and doing it on a regular basis.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. Yeah, when you think about the reason we call it streaking is because it's about winning streaks every single day.
Okay.
So you are in the process of creating streaks or streaking.
Yes. Okay. And so that happens on a daily basis, and you're just encouraging the consistency.
That is what it's all about, is
Kind of
consistency.
gamifying it a little bit.
Making it fun.
Yeah, making it fun, making it a little bit of a competition against yourself of can I keep this going?
Yes.
And a way to
yes.
motivate yourself. Sometimes you're not motivated to do the activity, but you're motivated to not lose the streak.
Yeah,
And
one of the primary things to think about is the question, how many days in a row can I do this?
Yeah.
That's the game.
Well, and you highlight this on your website, that there's so many apps and companies out there that utilize this concept of how long can you do this?
Right.
And that's the excitement. Like,
Right.
okay, I'm 1 day in, 2
Yep,
days in.
2 days in.
And there's something psychologically that we enjoy building that streak.
One of the things that happens inside, because we research this a lot as far as the brain science behind why it is that a streak works.
Yeah.
And when you think about why a streak works, is because it involves all aspects of your brain, in the sense that you've got your frontal lobe, which you're really thinking about. You've got to be intentional, deliberate. It involves your basal ganglia, which is where your habits are formed, where you've got automatic stuff. It involves all of the different areas where you get excitement and also pleasure. And so it envelops everything to be able to help you accomplish what you want to get done. But there's also a secret. I mean, there's a way you have to do it in order to get your brain to engage.
Yeah. Well, and I wanted to know, we're out here walking as part of your streak.
Yep.
Right.
How long has this streak been going, and why was this something that you started with?
Most streaks, see, when you think about something that you want to improve, oftentimes it starts in a physical aspect.
Yeah.
So that was where it started with us,
Okay.
was just wanting to, and the story actually was from running. We used to run a lot and did a lot of races.
Yeah.
And I would do that to stay motivated, to stay healthy. And then I read an article one time about this couple that was streak running,
Okay.
and it changed my perspective. And so what they did is, it wasn't how far they ran or how fast they ran, but it was just, can I run a mile every day?
Yeah. Yeah.
And when I read that, I called Jeff and I was like, hey, I just read this article about this streaking thing. You want to do it?
I was like,
And
absolutely.
you're in. I'm in.
I'm in. Let's start streaking.
I am in.
Well, and I've experienced that, as an ultramarathon runner, going to a race.
I knew you were a runner. I
and
could
train.
tell
You
it.
could just
tell.
feel. You
Yeah.
could.
Tell.
So you
We
go to a
would
race.
be running right now, but it's too hard to record and
Exactly.
run. I mean, you run out of breath too fast.
Exactly. The Mean Grit people know. They've watched the ones where we were out of breath. But yeah, so you train for the specific event, and then
Yes.
that event ends, and it's like, well, now what?
Now what?
Yeah.
Yes.
Where I am getting more into, I've long story of how I got into running, but short version is I love trail running, and there is a community, and it's more about just being on the trail.
Right.
And this idea of, it's more about the journey and the daily consistency, and then that's the reward.
Right.
But my question is, how do you first establish that mindset? Because a lot of people want results now. They want to see success now. And instead you're saying, hold up, think about this in a longer time period, and we're just going to focus on a little thing every day.
I love that you said mindset, because of all my years of streaking, I feel like that has been the thing that I've learned the most, is the changing of a mindset, because that's what happens. And so it really is this mindset of shifting from what I want to accomplish. So back to the running example of I'm training for this race, or I want to get a personal best, or I got to go this fast or this far. It's a switch to I'm just going to do it every day.
Yeah.
Like that is the shift. That is the accomplishment, is doing it every day. And it is a shift because when you're training for something, you're stretching far, and
Right.
it's not always something that you can continue to do forever.
But there is a benefit, right? Because you do work
Absolutely.
harder
Yes.
because you're trying to achieve that goal.
And so that's where, as we've grown with this, we've learned there's 3 different kinds of streaks. There's a lifetime streak, which are things that you want to do every day for the rest of your life.
Okay.
So for me, like a lot of my spiritual streaks are lifetime streaks. They're
Yeah.
things that I want to do every day for the rest of my life. And then there's time of life streaks, where you have something that you're like, I need this right now.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I'm going to do it forever,
Right.
but it's something I need right now. And then there's challenge streaks, where it's
Okay.
like, okay, I'm going to challenge myself. I'm going to push myself. And it's going to be for a specific period of time, because it's not something I'm going to be able to sustain forever.
Streak length, 30
Yeah.
days, 60
Yeah.
days, 90 days.
So that's been helpful to kind of evaluate and be like, okay, what kind of streak is this? Is this something that I'm going to do every day for the rest of my life? Is this something that I just kind of need right now? Or is this something that I'm going to push myself on because I'm trying to accomplish something very specific?
I love that differentiation, because to me it opens it up and kind of brings a relief to different types of goals. Like,
Exactly.
hey, it's okay to know that I'm only going to be doing this right now.
Right.
But there are, like you said, there are things that I want to do for the rest of my life, and how do I
Like Jeff,
adjust
he's
for
like,
that?
I want to floss my teeth forever. As long as I have my teeth,
I want to
I
keep
wanna
them in
keep
the
flossing
mouth.
but it's interesting how those little things that you know are important that you need to do are hard to get yourself to do.
Yeah.
Like flossing your teeth. So the streak has been super helpful. For me, it's taking my vitamins.
Yeah.
It's another thing that I'm like, yes, I want to do this, but why is it hard to get myself to do it? And the shift from the focus of taking my vitamins to keeping the streak alive, it's a small shift,
Yeah.
but it works.
That's awesome.
It works.
Every
And
day.
so it takes away some of that, I don't know, some of that inner
There's a
stuff that we
second
find.
part of the mindset as well that is important. So one is, you asked, how do I put off that outcome, that accomplishment, or whatever it is
Right.
I want to achieve, and really focus in on what I need to do on a daily basis. And this is one of the areas where we really started to research and study, because when we were running, we would sign up for races, and we're still running today, but back when we were doing it without a streak, we'd sign up for the race, and the accomplishment of the race was the motivator.
Yes.
You know what I
That's
mean?
right.
We're going to contribute to this race. In other words, we're going to pay money for it in order to train. And what eventually happened is we started, that external motivation didn't work anymore.
Yeah.
We would pay for the registration, but we wouldn't actually run the race, or we wouldn't train for it.
Right.
We called it charitable donations at that point.
Well, I think the comment you made on our phone call was you were paying a lot for a t-shirt.
Yes,
Yes.
exactly.
And then you felt guilty wearing it because you didn't actually run
what
the
was
race.
your time?
Yeah.
Well,
The-
it's 9:57.
That's right. And so what then happened is we looked at it and said, when Jamie found the article, it's like, okay, so why are we doing this? What is our motivation?
Yeah.
And it's we having 7 children, wanting to live a long life.
And
thought-
that last child being a little bit later, we're like, we kind of got to have energy for a little bit longer.
I get that. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so what we then said is, we need to have a different reason, which is our ultimate reason, which is to stay healthy, to stay fit. And then also, but not only healthy and fit physically, but spiritually, emotionally, mentally, all those areas.
Yeah.
And so what we then looked at is say, okay, if our motivation then is to stay healthy and fit, then what do we need to do in order to make the streak possible?
Mhm.
What is it that we need to change in our mindset, which is what I was getting to, which we changed our mindset to, we need to establish a floor on which we will walk or run every single day, which means we're going to do at least 1 mile walk or run 6 days a week.
Yeah.
And that was the floor. Now we could do a lot more than that, but we always needed to be okay and ready to do at least 1 mile every single day. So that's really where the first law of streaking came into being, which is to make the streak laughably simple, or in other words, to make it winnable every day.
Right.
Yes, yeah. And I listened to your most recent podcast, and I'm so glad that you mentioned this because, again, it was something that just opened my eyes so much. You talked about the standard of a basketball hoop being 10 feet. Who decided it was 10
Who
feet?
decided?
Why not 8? Why not 12? And it was one of those aha moments for me because in a day of social media, the comparison is instantaneous.
Absolutely.
And the
And
algorithm
nonstop.
is so smart that it's going to tell you exactly what you want to see, and your standard starts to be visualized in what you're consuming. And when I heard this, I thought, yeah, what are the standards I'm trying to live up to? And it may be different physically or spiritually or you know, in your business life, but I just thought, what is the standard? What can I reasonably maintain? And so I just really love that concept. So how do you manage? Tell us more about like the standard, but how do you also encourage progression with setting that standard?
I do love that you said that it can be different, because it can be different in different aspects of your life, and it's going to be different from person to person.
Yeah.
And I think that's a key component, is that part of streaking does cause you to look at yourself and be like, okay, what can I handle? Not like you're a marathon runner or ultra runner.
Yeah.
I'm not an ultra runner. So if I'm comparing to that, I'm going to get defeated right out of the chute.
Right.
But if I look at myself and I'm able to say, why am I doing the things I'm doing? I think that's a huge aspect of streaking, is the why am I doing it, and who do I want to become? That was something we learned early on, is you have to look at it and be like, I'm doing this because this is the person I want to be.
Yes.
And so that kind of becomes the standard, and that's a different standard for each person.
So there really is an importance in understanding who you want to be.
Yeah. And I do feel like streaking allows you to explore that a little bit. We've had streaks that I started because I was inspired by someone else, and I got into it, and I'd get 100 or 150 days and be like, I hate this. This is not something I want to keep doing. That was great learning, because now I can go forward and not feel guilty every time someone talks about that, because I'm like, oh, I know I don't want to do that. I tried it.
That's so interesting. Do you ever find it hard though to stop because you have this mentality of the glory is in the streak, and you're going, and now you've realized, actually, I don't want to do this, and I'm going to stop?
I feel like you have to Maria Kondo a streak sometimes, where you're like, I'm going to thank you for the joy that you gave me.
Okay.
And at that time of life, you did what you needed to do, and it's okay to say goodbye to you and be
I
okay
love
with
this
that.
reference. For those who don't know, Marie Kondo organizes, and if there's clothes, right?
Anything that you have to get rid of.
You want to get rid of, you just appreciate it and send it on its way. Why make it laughably simple?
Because it's important to recognize that when you tell people what you're doing, it's not going to be impressive.
Okay.
Well, but I think a little qualifier on that, hold on just a second, is the impressive part is not the activity. The impressive part is how long you're able to do the activity in a row.
Yeah.
So consecutively do the activity. That's where it gets really impressive.
Okay.
And that's where you unlock inside yourself what I call the consistency door.
Yeah.
This door of consistency, where you're able to now look at it and say, hey, this doesn't only work in my physical ability, but this works for improving my learning. This works for improving my spiritual life. This works for improving my social life, my family relationships.
Interactions with people,
And as soon as you start to understand the principles of successful streaks or consistency, then it unlocks an entire world.
Yeah.
Which is really quite phenomenal. And that's where the power of a streak comes in.
That's so exciting. This year, I mean, before we met, I had set a goal to run every day. And my base was 1 mile a day minimum and 25 miles a week. And all of a sudden I started to lose the desire to sign up for a race, because I was enjoying this process so much more, to the point where I'm like trying to find friends who are willing to put all of their effort in, just the effort. Like, let's go do our own race. We don't need to spend $500, $300 to get the t-shirt. I'll make a belt buckle if I need to. But I just love this concept, because I think, you know, for the fans of the Mean Grit, it's hey, how can we, as definition, we're average, and we're average in a lot of things. But there may be something that we're a little bit above average, and we want to increase that. And it's through this grind, and that's why I think there's such a solid synergy here between the consistency and making it simple and really focusing on the journey.
I feel like streaking does a couple things. One, it acknowledges that the grind, as you call it, is what's going to create the success. It's the continuing to do it when you don't want to do it, when the luster's worn off, when you're not as motivated. And then for me, streaking has turned it into a game, has helped me to recognize the things that I really do want to do and the things that I don't want to do. And then to recognize too that the things that I do want to do, yeah, I really do want to do them.
Yeah.
Like I want to do them.
It's intentional and deliberate. I want to go into something that you said about setting a goal.
Okay.
So, and I'm going to go into terminology for just a second, because understanding a goal, a habit, and a streak helps to, it's key to help to understand how to use all three for your benefit.
Yes.
So a goal is something that has a finish line.
Yes.
It is basically a starting line and a finish line, and then there's a period of time in which to accomplish that goal. So a lot of people will use the word goal when they say, I set a goal to run a mile every day. That actually isn't a goal. The goal is to complete the ultra marathon.
Right.
The goal is to complete the marathon. The goal is to complete the 3-mile race. Whatever it is, the goal is to do that. And once it's done, it's done.
Yes.
The goal is complete. You've accomplished it.
You've either accomplished it or you didn't. Like it's very easy.
You won or lost. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Whereas a streak is something that when you looked at it, you say, okay, I'm going to set a streak to run at least 1 mile every day. There's some really key important words that we use. The word at least, okay, or that phrase, sets the floor. It's going to be at least this much. And that floor is on which I'm going to judge the standard of my activity every single day.
Yeah.
So for someone who's not a runner, for someone who's not done it all their lives, their at least maybe I'm going to run at least a 1/4 mile every day.
Yes.
And that's great. And you keep that going. And the streak is where you're intentional and deliberate and looking at it as, how many days in a row can I do this? So for Jamie and I, this is our 9th year of the streak of run or walk at least 1 mile every day. And on some days, it's strictly walk a mile.
Yeah.
And on other days, we've trained for marathons together.
Yes.
And that has become a goal. So a streak actually does support a goal because you can do streaks to reach a goal. So I set goals not as often as I used to because I have the streaks, but the streak can definitely be used to get a goal. Now let's talk about habits for a second, because a lot of people look at habits. And I looked at habits, and here's the key deception of a habit, is that you think something good in your life will become automatic, meaning that you don't have to think about it. Meaning you don't have to do it anymore, or you don't have to think about it anymore.
Right.
I just get up and start running. I don't know how I got to it. It just happened.
It just happened.
Seriously. And people start to think that. Now, I'm not poo-pooing habits. I think that there are things that, for example, and this is a classic example that I like to use, when you start learning to type on a keyboard, you are using your frontal lobe to actually put your fingers where the keys are on that keyboard.
Right.
Through time, your brain makes connections, and because your brain is this energy conservation center, it doesn't want to expend energy, it's going to move the connections from your frontal lobe, as you get used to them, down to your basal ganglia, where now you don't have to think about where the keys are on the keyboard.
Right.
Your fingers just go there. But what you are thinking about is, what sentence am I going to write? That remains a streak. That will never get into automatic mode.
Right.
Do you see what I mean?
Yes, yes.
And so a habit, yes, important for what I look at as motor skills.
Okay.
You know, you never think about how to walk anymore, do you?
No, it just happens.
It
You tie your shoe,
right.
or a lot of those things.
All the motor skills, and those are important to develop. So if, for example, you're trying to develop a motor skill, you can use a streak to get that to the place where it becomes a habit. So for example, another one, a beginning pianist, someone who's just starting on the piano.
Yeah.
As they start on the piano, very concentrated on what key equals what note equals, but what you're doing is developing motor skills so that as you practice, those neurons connect in your brain, and now the motor skills are not continually thought about. They're actually down in your basal ganglia, and now you can actually think about creating music, not what finger goes to what note.
Well, and is there, I don't know if it's irony or just a necessity, if you stop your streak, that motor skill lessens.
That is right.
That is true.
The streak helps maintain that motor skill, and if not, most likely will improve.
Yes.
So
I think that's what we had a struggle with the habit thing, is there's this, it feels deceptive because the idea of doing something for a certain number of days, the 21 days is what is often used.
Yeah.
That once you've done it that many times in a row, then it's a habit. And for those of us that have tried it and it didn't work, then you start to think there's something wrong with you.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I guess everybody else has figured this out, but it didn't work for me.
Right.
And it's wrong. It's just that that's not true. There are certain things that you will always have to be intentional about. They may get easier to do because you've done them consistently, but if you stop being intentional, it will eventually stop.
Yeah.
It does go away.
It goes away. And so just understanding that and embracing the idea that it's like, okay, there are things that I will always have to be intentional about, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And then that leads into that mindset shift where it's like, and life happens.
Right.
So there's going to be variable degrees of quality to those things that I'm doing every day in the consistency. There's going to be times that I knock it out of the park and it's awesome. And then there's going to be times that life has happened and I'm like, yeah, it was the best I could do. It was the floor. I was lying on the floor, but I did it. I didn't stop.
But I want to ask this question because as I've been thinking about this, there was an app that I used a couple of years ago that you played mental games and you built up a streak. And I had like a 45, 60-day streak I think I was at. And then we were traveling and I missed a day.
And it was devastating.
And it was devastating. And I didn't go back.
You never went back.
And so what is your advice to combat those feelings where you feel the accomplishment in the streak, and then for whatever reason, you're sick or something happens that you break that streak? What do you do?
This again lends itself to that mind shift that I think is a key component of it, because it is devastating. I've had that experience more than once where I've had hundreds of days in a row of doing something, and then one day I literally forgot, and I'm like, I don't even understand how I forgot. What happened to me? And I was devastated for a while and went through all of the emotions. But then I think the wonderful thing that I appreciate about our app is going back and being like, okay, I did it for this many days in a row.
Yeah.
That was an accomplishment. Like that in itself is great. Do I want to stop doing it? No, I want to keep doing it. The point of the streak was to help me to stay being consistent. So I'm willing to start over and appreciate that. Yeah, I did it 100 days and then I missed a day and I'm doing it again, but it's still this flow of consistency that is a part of it.
Yeah.
And so that's where that mind shift changes and where there's some evaluation to it.
I really like that because I downloaded the app and I was looking through, and I think we're talking a lot about things that we should be doing. Mm-hmm. But there's also things like if you're struggling with addiction, and where it's kind of the opposite. It's not that you've stopped doing something, it's that you've done something that you didn't want to do.
Right.
And it's a similar... Is that a similar reset, or is there a difference in that?
Yeah, so what I look at is, so there isn't necessarily a difference. I mean, no matter what, you're going to feel a loss whenever you lose a streak.
Yeah.
Whether it be a streak of I started doing something I don't want to do, and it's been a streak of sobriety, or I've stopped something that I wanted to keep doing, and that there's a loss there, especially when you get up into a triple digit and a quadruple digit streak.
Yeah.
You know, I've lost a streak that was 1,700 days old, and that's a tough loss. And also at the same moment, it's an opportunity to evaluate, to say, is this something that I want in my life?
Yeah.
Is this something that I still want to do? Is this something that I want to continue to do? And once that evaluation happens, and I start over in essence, then I recognize and see how it's benefited my life in a lot more significant way.
Yeah.
One of the things I was thinking about too, as you were talking about our mindset and making that shift in your mindset, is the idea behind a streak is that it's a tool.
Yeah.
It's not the master.
Yeah.
And see what happens when people start to say, well, I lost my streak. The streak became the master. The streak is the tool. you're the master.
Right.
You're the one that controls your own destiny.
The tool is the shovel. The
Yeah.
gold is what you're becoming
Yeah.
in the process. But
I like
don't
that.
confuse the gold for the shovel.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Very, wow. Did you just pull that right
Just
out of
pulled
the
that
hat?
one. Just
That was
made
just
that
right
one
there.
up, right
Boom.
there.
We are the gold. We are the gold.
One thing about, you brought up addiction, and we've kind of recognized that don't streaks are harder. So don't eat sugar, don't drink. Those are hard streaks. And there's a lot of addiction recovery programs out there that work really, really well.
Yeah.
We've come to recognize that for us, we're more in the place of displacement. So rather than saying, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, we're saying add what you're going to do to displace the don'ts.
I like
Focus
that.
on the things that you want to be doing, not so much the things you don't.
I can't remember the book that I read, but it was basically when you're communicating with a child and you say, don't put that in your mouth, all they hear is
Put it in
that
your
in your
mouth.
mouth.
in your mouth.
Yes.
And so you have to restructure your wording and your thinking to say, take that and put it somewhere else.
Yes.
And that's what you're saying. Right?
My favorite is the race car analogy that Jeff always says on the Indy 500.
NASCAR.
NASCAR, thank you.
Daytona 500, yeah.
If you're when you're driving around at those speeds and there's a wreck, if you look at the wreck, that's where you're going.
Yeah.
You
You're gonna
have
be part
to
of
look
it.
at where you want to be.
Yes.
And that's always been huge for me to remember. And I tell myself that. I'm like, okay, I'm looking at the wreck. I'm saying I don't want to go to the wreck, but that's what I'm focusing on.
Right.
I need to figure out where I want to go and focus on that.
What I'm hearing a lot is it's coming back to your perspective.
Yeah.
And really knowing, where is your focus going? What do you want to become? And starting to eliminate the noise that's surrounding.
Right.
Is that?
And the way the elimination happens is not by actively eliminating it.
Yeah.
It's actually by putting into your life all those good things that you want to do. So for example, Jamie and I had noticed through time, as we put more streaks into our life that we wanted to be doing, our TV watching went down. Our binge watching went down.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, all of the things that are enjoyable, but what I call are less valuable. Because in life, there's less valuable things and more valuable things. And the more valuable things seem to be difficult to get to.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why the streak is make it
Whereas
laughably simple.
Valuable,
The less valuable
like a
things.
Cheeto is so easy
So
to eat a Cheeto. Takes no effort at all.
so the thing that we look at is everything in your life that you have has some value.
Yeah.
Otherwise you wouldn't do it at all. There is value to it. Even if that thing harms you, you have some value there.
Right.
So what I'm doing and what we're striving to do is take a look at the things that are valuable and putting those in our lives, not saying, well, I'm going to stop all the less valuable things.
Yeah.
Instead, I'm going to put more valuable things in my life. And the way those valuable things work is they'll start to force out all the less valuable things.
Yeah. All right. So we have finished our streaking for the day.
Yes.
At least one part of it,
One
actually.
part, because there you have multiple.
We do have multiple streaks.
Yeah.
So that was just the start of one.
Okay.
And on the streak itself, I don't know, Jamie may have told you, but so I have another streak to pick up at least one piece of trash every day.
Oh.
So that was one of the things you saw me do.
I saw you do it. Wasn't sure that's
a
awesome.
streak.
Okay.
And then we have, other physical streaks that I have are to do at least 10 push-ups a day, to do at least 1 squat a day, to do at least, to walk on all fours. We interviewed someone that had a streak to walk on all fours, to walk on their hands and feet every day.
Wow.
And he was phenomenal.
Yeah.
And so I picked that up. And what I found is people ask me, like, why do you do that? It's because it helps with flexibility and mobility and things like that. So all of those are streaks. And you'll notice how laughably simple they are.
Yeah.
1 squat, walk on all fours. So like if I just do that just walk on it for 1 or 2, 3 steps, that counts.
You're in. Yeah.
I'm in. 10 push-ups, which for me is pretty easy. We have others in the app, in the My Streaks app, that do 1 push-up a day.
Right.
But that again is the floor. That's what you're
it
putting.
Just gets you down
it's
in
your
the
standard,
position, and then you can do more.
And it's like, well, I'm down here. I may as well do 2.
Yeah.
Right. My brother-in-law has dedicated his life to fitness, and he
Yes.
works a lot right now with senior citizens and older people and his philosophy is, if you want to be able to lift something above your head when you're 80, you've got to do it now.
You've got to do it now.
And this is promoting
That's
that.
exactly right.
Exactly.
I just love this idea of creating a more long-term perspective on all that you're doing, because I was having a conversation with a friend recently about what if in our lifetime, longevity becomes a reality, because I think we're moving in that direction where the average right now, I think, is 79. That moves to 85 or 100. And all of a sudden, people need to shift their perspective of, oh, what used to be 80 years is now 100 years.
Right.
Yeah.
And it comes to this.
And 20 more years is a lot.
It's
I
a
mean,
lot.
that is a lot of time. So,
which leads me to a question I'm dying to ask, because in your last podcast, you talked about measurement and measuring the activity instead of time or money.
Yeah.
And to me, that was eye-opening. Tell me more about that.
So a long time ago, I think it was in the 80s or 90s, a tool called the time matrix came out. And the time matrix put in 4 different quadrants, activities, important versus urgent.
Yeah.
And in quadrant 1 were the important, urgent activities, somewhat like if you think about saving a life. That's kind of important, urgent.
We would take care of
right
that.
now.
Need to get that done. It overrides everything.
Yeah.
Whereas in quadrant 2 is the not urgent, but important.
Yeah.
And those are the things that we never really get to. Quadrant 3 is they're urgent, but they're not important. Like the show's coming out, I got to watch it tonight.
Yep.
But it's not really that important. And quadrant 4 is I'm going to scroll through every single social media feed I possibly can for hours and hours and hours on end. That's not important, not urgent.
Right.
Waste of time.
Yeah.
What we've looked at and what we considered is that the time matrix is really an activity matrix. Rather than looking at quadrant 2 time, it's the activity. And that's how I measure whether or not I'm being productive or efficient or growing in life, is if I do the activity, not how much time I've spent on that activity.
Yeah.
So for example, one of my streaks is to write at least 1 sentence every day. 1 sentence is the activity, and that will sometimes fill 2 hours of time and sometimes fill 30 seconds of time.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter because I'm doing that activity every single day. I've now written hundreds and hundreds of articles, hundreds of letters.
Yeah.
We've written the book. All of those things have come from write at least 1 sentence a day. So the activity becomes the primary focus.
And we found this out through setting different kinds of streaks, because there's a lot out there too. I had years ago a streak to just write in my journal for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
But the thing that's interesting is that then the focus is on the time, and the time becomes the thing that you're focusing on rather than the activity and
you're focused on setting the
timer
stopwatch
and how much time do I have left and have I done it long enough and those kinds of things. And the other thing that I've come to recognize, because when we were on our walk, you talked about I spent a lot of time on something, and it's interesting to me because I spent a lot of time thinking about this. Why? And I'll give you a background first. We've had people, our daughter had a streak to read her scriptures every day.
Okay.
And it was just
at least 1 verse.
Read 1 verse every day. And she did it for like 86 days. And then she stopped. And we're like, why did you stop? And she's like, because I was only doing 1 verse. Like I wasn't ever doing more. We're like, okay, so how much have you, this was weeks after she had stopped her streak, because she didn't tell us at first, and weeks later, and we're like, so how much have you done since you've stopped your streak? And she's like, well, actually, I haven't been doing it at all. So it was interesting to me. I spent a lot of time thinking about, why is it easier for us to do nothing than it is for us to do something small? Like, why is that something that, and what I've come to realize, at least in myself, and I think I'm not alone in this, is that when there's something that's really important to us, we feel like time denotes how important it is. So if we're not spending, if we can't give it the time that says this is an important thing, you deserve this amount of time, then I'm not going to do it because I'm going to say, well, I'll get to it. I'm going to get to it tomorrow. I'm going to get to it when I can give it the amount of time that it deserves, because it's really important.
Yeah.
But the hard thing is time passes, and we're not doing it in that time. And so that's the shift, is recognizing that it's not the time that you spend on it, it's that you're doing it every day and it adds up.
Yeah.
The challenge is that when you don't do something for a long period of time, then you start to feel guilty and it nags at you and you're like, I need to do it, I need to do it, I need to do it. And then eventually you do find some time and you spend that 2 hours and you get all these endorphins because you're like, I did it, and you feel good for that day that you did it. And that carries you for a little while. But then you kind of get back into that pattern of not doing it again.
Yeah.
So that's the challenge, is that sometimes you don't get those same level of endorphins for doing something small every single day.
Yeah.
but you can get actually more progress.
It's so interesting.
So
I'm
it's
sitting here
a-
thinking back to as a president of a company, the meetings that I would hold, and it's like, oh, we blocked off an hour.
Right.
Do you need that
Do
full
you
hour?
need that amount of
Like-
time? But you feel good because you're like, it deserves an
Yes,
hour. That's how
yes.
important it is.
How much time I could have
How
saved.
much- yes. And
That's
so-
interesting.
I think that there's interesting, I think it's called the Pareto principle, where work will fill the amount of time you give it,
Yes.
no matter what.
No matter what.
And so that's where again, back to activity. I look at it and say, I should do quadrant 2 activities every day.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter how much time is spent on those. It's that I do them every day. And one of the things that Jamie talked about that we talk about often is when you start to do that, when you start to switch from the peaks and valleys to the consistency, there will be moments when you have what we call breakthrough results, where something all of a sudden happens and you recognize that it was the 6 months that you spent doing the Laughably Simple every day that led up to this moment.
Yeah.
And you recognize that, wow, this is a monumental moment.
We jokingly call it the overnight success because the truth is
You've
every
been doing-
overnight success was actually months
Right,
and years
right.
of work, and then all of a sudden
Oh, the
something
irony.
happened.
I love it. I
Yeah.
love that concept. If you want overnight success, you have to start yesterday or today.
Yeah.
I guess
Right.
it's not
And
it's
it's
Today,
today. You
start
just
today.
start today.
Yeah,
Just start today.
start. That's it, and keep going, and just do it consistently
Mm-hmm.
every single day. Start a streak.
I love it. So where can people where do they need to go to start a streak?
Yeah. So I would say so there's methodology and tools. So methodology you can learn from our podcast, Streaking. We talk all about methodology all the time, how different people apply it, what it is you do. And then to join a community of streakers, My Streaks, the app, will get you to where you need to go.
Okay.
It'll start. And here's one of the things we've gotten criticized for this. So I'm going to just say it out there. It is a subscription. You get one streak to start. And people are like, well, how come I don't get all streaks for free?
Yeah.
We purposely put the subscription in not to make money.
Which sounds counterintuitive, but explain.
that's-
I love it.
We put the subscription in to slow people down.
Yeah.
To recognize, because you get excited about streaking. Honestly, when we sit down at a table like this and talk to people, they're like, oh, I'm going to go out there and start this streak,
yeah.
this streak, this streak, this streak. And what we have recognized is the first streak that we had, we kept it for 300 days before we started the second streak. Now that was by accident. That wasn't like us intentionally saying, okay, we're going to keep it. Yeah, it wasn't designed.
No.
Okay.
And so what we did is we put a subscription in place so that people aren't tempted immediately to subscribe. Now, there are benefits to subscription, and we're going to continue to add value on that side. But the primary purpose of the app is to help people start and keep streaks alive.
Yeah.
So in My Streaks, you download, you register, you get everything signed up, and then you start one streak. Once you've kept that streak for 3 days, you can have another streak. So we give you one pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Up to 3 streaks and then you have 3 streaks, and you have to keep those alive up to I think it's 5,000 experience points.
Yeah.
And then you can start to get more until you get to unlimited streaks. But the whole idea is to build your consistency muscle
Yeah.
so that you're strong consistently, because once you recognize that you can do anything, as long as it's set up as a laughably simple streak, you record it every day and you share it in the community, all of a sudden the world of improvement opens up to you.
Right. Right.
And it becomes something really amazing.
And another thing that I love about your app is the personas, and that's another thing you can unlock. Right?
Yes,
Yeah.
the motifications, what we call them.
Because everybody needs a different type of motivation. Some people love. I had a high school football coach who was kind of that old school, really yell, get in your face, and that motivated me. But it didn't
We
motivate.
call that Drill Sergeant Dave.
Yes,
He's on
yes.
there.
And I've kind of transitioned. I chose the yoga because I'm very mindful these days, and so I really navigated to that one. But I set up my first streak when I was younger, and in Hong Kong, networking was so big.
Oh, huge.
And I did that, as part of my job. And then since you kind of get to this level where you don't need to network with people just come to you. And moving back to the US, I've found my network isn't as strong as I thought. So my first one is reach out to somebody every day.
There you go.
And so I'm
That's
excited.
beautiful, and I think that's great. That's one of my streaks, is to make at least one connection every day.
Yeah.
And that's been huge. I mean, that's how we got connected.
Yep.
I mean, there's all kinds of different connections through there. But I would say that that's, as you look at setting your streaks, you may start with a physical streak, but it can go anywhere from there.
Yeah.
And once you learn how to set it up, you'll realize that every aspect of your life can have a streak.
And that's I think the exciting part. And thank you so much for this time today, because this has been so fun. And I think just this idea of being able to open up, I can't remember what you said, but you just open up this idea that I can improve in so many ways because you've built that muscle of consistency.
And I can improve at whatever is happening in my life.
Yeah.
Like whatever circumstances are there, there is still room to do a little bit better.
And I think a lot of society, we struggle with self-esteem and accomplishment and making it laughably simple. At the end of the day, you can say, I didn't get much done, but I did
do this. Yes.
Yeah.
And I think looking at it too and saying, and this counts, like this, it has value. Even
and giving
though,
grace to yourself.
Giving grace.
You
100%.
And maybe a little bit combating what we were talking about earlier about the comparisons of looking at it and saying, I don't need to do what everybody else did. I did what I needed to do today, and it was good, and it counts.
That's awesome. Well, hey, thank you so much for joining us today on the Mean Grit Podcast. This has been episode 7 with Jeff and Jami Downs. We're streaking, and I love it. So please like, subscribe, and go download the app.
Yeah, My Streaks app. Keep streaking.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.